Yep. Give me a nod when you're ready.
Like
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Bullets of Bourbon. I'm Frank Gao, joined by my co-host Mac Unlock. Today we have a returning guest. It's Colonel Greg Jones of Weapons Trained Battalion Quantico. Last time we had him on, we talked about some of the developments over at Weapons Trained Battalion, which oversees a lot of weapons training across the Marine Corps, but also the Marine Corps shooting team. And most recently, a Moradman summarizing the latest combat Marksmanship Symposium came out, and we've wanted to address some of these topics for a while. It wasn't quite the right time the last time we had Colonel Jones on, but now that the Moradman's come out, there's a lot more freedom to talk about these topics. But sir, appreciate you coming on again.
Yeah, thanks. I guess that means I wasn't too horrible last time. We had more than about 3 people listen to the podcast. But seriously, I do appreciate y'all's attention to marksmanship in the Marine Corps and the battalion. You guys are definitely good stewards of the shooting team as well. Yeah, and obviously to the point of not necessarily wanting to talk about it, I just got to make sure I don't get in front of the general officers, because as you all know, the Moradman is the official, no kidding, the official message saying that we're going to do some of these things. So just wanted to make sure that the general and his staff, generals and their staffs get a say in the chop, but glad to be on.
Absolutely. And now that we can talk about it, let's launch into it. So the latest Moradman dropped really a lot of updates, but you hinted at some of the ways that the Marine Corps is starting to use technology to evaluate Marines under time and accuracy pressure. Do you want to talk about that technology, how it came to fruition, and how you see it being implemented?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the JMAP, or the Joint Marksmanship Automated Program. If you folks, your listeners know Ken Nelson and Brian Nelson, Brian's dad, the owner of Practice Score. They have worked with Weapons Training Battalion and ONR for about 4 years using JMAP. I think I was talking to Ken a little while ago. I sort of was describing JMAP as a by us, for us Practice Score, but he's told me there's so many widgets that they've put in there to pull out and extrapolate data. It's not even necessarily Practice Score anymore. It's probably something better. Maybe I don't want to describe Ken's product, but yeah. So that's been the journey, and all the shooting techniques for infantry marksmanship training and rifle marksmanship training, or a derivative of that experimentation. When our instructors are teaching you how to present a weapon to take a first shot, or how to reload, it's not some random expert shooter telling you how to do it. It's a lot of expert shooters with thousands of data points, with human performance scientists looking at what we're doing and saying, no, like, these are the best ways statistically, scientifically, to do these procedures and these drills. So while a lot of the shooting that you are doing may look like, I was talking to an NCO that was doing one of our courses recently. He said, "Oh yes, it's still sort of like CMP tables." Yeah, I mean, short bay is short bay, long bay is long bay. There are definitely some similarities in the drills. The biggest difference becomes in the instruction developed through the analysis, and then with the what we call it micro data that can be given back to a shooter. Time first shot to second shot was this much. Time between last shot and mag reload was X, and then sitting there with a highly trained instructor coaching folks is definitely different. I think than we've done in the past. I think too often in the past, even commands that I was in, you've shot at boot camp or TBS, then you go to do CMP tables, and you quote unquote know how to shoot. even if no one's really taught you short bay or some more dynamics with long distance shooting. You're sort of expected to perform, and folks either figure it out or they don't. So I guess it's a long-winded explanation of just really talking about the differences, how they came about, and how we're able to use them. So definitely, I guess one last thing I would add is microdata to make sure that instructor can enhance students' capability, but also that data can aggregate from platoon, squad, platoon, company, battalion, regiment, division, or the service. And within training command, they've already used aggregate data to start making decisions and showing what we're doing now was more lethal, provided a more lethal Marine than previous methods of shooting. And that's really how where we are today with the IMA infantry marksmanship assessment for the infantry, and then rifle marksmanship assessment for non-infantry. And the only primary difference is RMA is lesser included, just less drills, and that's generally correlated to less training time at MCT versus a lot more training time at ITB with the Infantry Marine Corps. So everybody's getting the same thing. You just don't quite get as much if you don't have as much training and with your service rifle.
Okay, and that all sounds really interesting. I guess I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but what I'm seeing specifically in the NFL is a move towards analytics, right? They're bringing in all this information. They have chips in players' helmets inside the football itself, and that's starting to govern the way that coaches are approaching preparing their guys for the game, but also the way that they're executing certain plays and certain decisions. So everything you're saying about microdata absolutely makes sense. I think that's the general trend that things are going. Do you see those lines of effort, like athletics embracing analytics, but also the Marine Corps embracing all this micro data? Do you see those kind of in the same direction?
Absolutely. I think I've explained it in a very similar way that you just did, Frank. We were really trying to TCOM when the Marine came out. The Comstrat officer, Major Penny, I think, did a really good job of getting us talking to a lot of people in the press, designed to make sure that we're telling the story instead of allowing the story to be told for us. Having folks that maybe are not as informed because they're not in the service anymore make uninformed comments about what we're doing. And in some of the press that we were doing, that's exactly how I explained it. This is really just 21st century information age technology and data analytics, and applying the same things you see, like you're talking about in professional sports, to a PFC at MCT or ITB. And definitely, I believe, and I know that the generals above me believe that's really the least that a young man or woman that might go into harm's way deserves when we teach them how to shoot the weapon they're going to defend themselves with.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see some of the. You have a very capable cadre of instructors working there over in the IMT and in Weapons Training Battalion in general. I can't wait to see how they apply some of that information and then start training Marines to. Well, I think tailoring coaching to specific Marines, I think, is important, but also some of the general technique improvements that we're going to see as soon as this thing gets implemented. But everything we're talking about is about marksmanship, and that's always been a hallmark of the Marine Corps legacy. That's something that all of us have been expected to live up to through rigorous practice and application. And marksmanship has changed since you and Matt first joined the Marine Corps. Do you feel that with these changes, we're moving in the appropriate direction to live up to the legacy of every Marine and rifleman?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, yes, I do. I think some of the negative comments that we get, I think are uninformed. I think they're also start from, we teach you how to shoot at boot camp and TBS. We teach you the right way, air quotes, the right way to wear your uniform, the right way to address your senior superiors, the right way to about face, the right way to salute, the right way to refer to a room. It's not a bulkhead, it's not a wall anymore. It's a bulkhead. It's not the floor. It's the deck, right? And so in this context where we're teaching you the right way to do the thing, we teach you the right way to shoot. When we change the way in which we teach you to shoot, people assume that we, or those of us that are currently in an organization that is changing the way that we instruct and assess, that we mean that what they did was wrong. I have never said that. I have never said that, and I don't believe that anyone that works for me or that I work for has said that. I mean, this is about exactly what you asked. So how do we ensure that that every Marine remains a rifleman, and this is part and parcel of that. Last commandant said we want you to be more elite. People got frustrated with that, but I mean, I love a challenge. I think most Marines do, and this is what Weapons Training Battalion and TCOM have been working on. And the data's there. The data's there to prove it. I've done some of the drills too. I'm not a competitive shooter, but I know that I've gotten significantly better receiving the instruction from the battalion. So I don't know if that specifically answers the question, but again, I guess one thing that I'll add is doing some experimentation with TVS. We started off with ARQ for multiple different reasons. Begs the question, well, why didn't we start with all of it? I don't really know. But what we did with TVS recently, and says in the MARAD that we're allowed to experiment with entry-level training, we kept what I believe the best parts of ART, the old way to do it, potentially the right way to do it. Again, I don't like using those adjectives. We like to talk about more lethal or less lethal instead of good or bad. We basically took what I believe are the tried and true portions of the ART. It's not the shooting positions. It's the training methodology: crawl, walk, run, classroom, snap in, dry fire, slow fire, right? So the lieutenants did supported shooting. They did slow fire before they put it all together and had their flak and Kevlar on and did the full shebang with the ARQ. And they were significantly better than we've seen fleet averages. So again, Parris Island is working on some things as well, but it's all designed to make Marines lethal. And 27 years into this, certainly General Sullivan, General Iam is more than me. We don't wake up I won't speak for them. I'll assume that this is the way for the way they think about it as well. But I'll just speak for myself. But I do not wake up, nor do my Marines wake up to make it easier on the Marine Corps or to make us less lethal. So and no one I know is trying to make the Marine Corps worse, and we know that we're making marksmen more lethal. Hopefully that answers your question?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you brought up the topic of the right way. I don't think it's so much the right way. It's just that particular person's the right way for that era. I think people attach themselves to whatever they did in entry-level training, especially if it made them successful. But I think what's important is that the ceiling needs to continue to be raised. And that's exactly what you guys are doing.
No, I agree. That's a good point. When we talk about this, teams is always, I know we'll talk about teams at the end, but teams is sort of always integral to the discussion of Weapons Training Battalion and the advancement of marksmanship, at least since I talked to Jack Cuddy, who started the Scout Sniper Instructor School in the 70s. But again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it surely rhymes. In 1907, we took the best parts, the best things, that civilian marksmanship had to offer. It was Olympic high-power shooting discipline, and that worked well for us for quite a long time. And now, whether it's practice score or the focus of precision and speed combined together in hit factor, we're taking some of the best that practical action shooting has today. And again, I agree with you. It just aligns better to the era, and things change, and change isn't bad. If change makes Marines more lethal, then we're going to pursue it.
I mean, I kind of look at it. I'm sorry for jumping in, but I kind of look at it as like during those times, if you look at the battles, they trained the way they fought in those battles. And you go to the most recent, I would say most recently, we didn't necessarily train marksmanship wise the way we were actually fighting.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case. Like, ART, that was that qualification portion, and it's making sure people understood the fundamentals. But I would say what we are doing now translates more closely to the recent fight that we have done. And I'm not going to say we necessarily missed the mark on that type of training, but we've definitely allowed technology and analysis of the fight to catch up, and we're answering that call now.
Yes, yeah. I mean, good point. I mean, the combat-based lethality assessment that the Combat Marksmanship Symposium 2017, the gunners, colonels, the NCO staff NCOs that came to that was the combat-based lethality assessment, which is a gap analysis done by combat CDNI capabilities. Well, I'm going to mess up the acronym, but CDNI /MCST. I mean, that gap analysis was done based on a rearward look at how good we were or were not in marksmanship, and it said we're not very good at shooting while on the move. We're not very good at shooting at movers. We don't collect enough data, and we're not good on marksmanship, and we're not good at shooting at unknown distance. Matt, to your point, that those exactly correlate to the things that you do not do on the ART. You don't shoot movers, really. You don't shoot while moving, and you don't shoot at unknown distances. And so, right. So this whole train as you fight thing. And if you got moving robots that you can now shoot at, steel's easier to procure from civilian market, right? I mean, if I was king for a day, I would never make another range I'd make a range with one berm at about 1,000 meters, and that's it. Because then I would put robots out or steel at varying distances. And now that we've got a mill reticle scope in the squad common optic for the infantry, I'd make them use the mill reticle pattern and figure it out. That's what a lot of the things we're doing in infantry marksmanship training and rifle marksmanship training.
Yeah, we've touched on a lot of topics. What you just mentioned right now is the way in which technology is changing. The ART really came out during firing sights, and we all remember because that was our first entry. We had to, do the little clicks at each yard line. And technology is changing. The way that we are training is changing. But I would also say our understanding of lethality has changed.
Absolutely.
I'm remembering the discussion by Dave Grossman on combat, and there were I would say a good amount of time, conventional armies found that a lot of their soldiers were firing over the heads of enemies. They weren't really, and it took the change to humanoid targets and some other necessary tweaks to just the psychology of combat to get them to actually fire and hit their targets. So the way that we're approaching these things is constantly changing. Change isn't a bad thing. I think people just see something different and they don't like it. They're not experiencing it. They're not. They see a snippet from an article or they see a comment and they're not spending the week dry firing it and grass week. They're not using it to better themselves. So it's very easy to dismiss these changes.
I agree. And we have had some people show up to Mix, and I won't say their name because I didn't ask if I could quote them. But they came out and given us some good credit for changing things. Then again, for retirees that are interested, they're allowed to sign up and conduct Mix. And if they don't necessarily want to shoot and they just want to come out and see, as long as they can, I mean, I can get them on base, but they can certainly just call the battalion. We'd be more than happy to show them what we're doing. And again, we're not perfect. Talking to old COs, weapons training battalion, or gunners that came before me, I've learned a lot about like what we're doing and how we're doing it. And if nobody wants to come up with a good new idea that's not really good or new, right? So I appreciate all the perspective that I get from the people that are interested in having an informed conversation.
Well,
because I usually find that they've got a lot of value to add, but it can also help advise me and others on how not to make similar missteps.
kind of speaking to that point of the one individual, that came out, prior to him coming out to that Mick, he didn't really, he kind of argued the point, and you and I were part of that conversation, and he was caught in, I don't want to say back in the glory days, but he was caught into the scope of what he knew. But whenever he finally came out, he came back to us afterwards and wrote a very good, compliment to you, essentially saying, you know what? I retract what I previously said. This is the way. This is the future of marksmanship, and you guys are knocking it out of the park. I mean, that's a confidence boost right there. Whenever you transition somebody from the way they thought before to getting on board.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I remember that the same way you do, Matt. But it's the NCOs and staff NCOs that are knocking out of the park, right? I mean, who made AMTP? I mean, that's two gunners and below with the cadre on the AMTP, mostly NCOs and staff NCOs, and who figured out how to operationalize it. at scale, mostly enlisted instructors at Infantry Training Battalion East. So again, I just throw that out there because sometimes I don't want, I'm not, I just want the credit to be where the credit's supposed to be. And then lather, so those are the duty experts. Lay on top of the technology, lay on top of scientists, human performance scientists and statisticians. Those are the guys that figured it out. I just go to the generals and with the data that the enlisted Marines put together and ask for money and decisions.
Yeah. So out of the many changes that were brought forth by that MAR admin, it mentions changing the CPP, and it's a long overdue, very welcome update in my opinion. So I know that Weapons Training Battalion and some other entities are in the process of looking at the CPP and then making recommendations on how it needs to be changed. In your opinion, what are some aspects that need to be modernized?
Initial thoughts at the CMS were the training blocks are generally fine. They were already modified to the M18. And at the end of the day, one thing we got to remember with the pistol is it is a secondary weapon system. And if we make the pistol range so difficult, then we're not helping folks in the fleet or bases or stations. Armors have to carry pistols, ammo techs, especially with field ASPs, they have to carry pistols. Duty standards are carrying pistols. But the biggest thing that we realized is, and again, you'd mentioned it before, Frank, just with Grossman's book, the psychological methodologies of how to kill somebody. Well, it is a humanoid target, but with ARQ, you literally can't qualify if you're not getting lethal shots in the thoracic cavity, shooting someone in their heart or their lungs, or shooting someone in the head, shoot them in the brain. So then why would we not just take the ARQ target and use that for the CPP? Currently, on the CPP, my gunner did this work, but you can qualify on the pistol range with basically getting fours, shooting people in the arms and the lats, and you can be an expert with only getting one lethal shot. So like there's not rings. The people that are tracking the pistol range, it's sort of a modified circular target where the circles are just morphed over and the point range is just morphed over the body. So it was a good update in 2014. Obviously, people are paying attention to the things we're paying attention to now. Do we just need to transition mostly the target and then the scoring bracket? Now, just like the ARQ, people aren't. It's going to be more difficult to walk away with expert. I would assume the same thing would happen to pistol. So we're not satisficing, but we're looking to improve in a way that does not become a problem to the fleet. Because again, we don't expect a PFC ammo tech, or quite honestly, a second lieutenant, even though they do get pistol range, second lieutenant adjutant to be grandmasters with a pistol. They need to be safe first and foremost. But again, it doesn't make sense to have different targets. And again, as you mentioned, makes folks understand where their sight picture should be on a human's body.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And you kind of hit on, I think, some of the fleet considerations that I was thinking about. But I think, your comments about accuracy are on point. What I would also add is, I guess I'm assuming that you guys are also looking at the par times, because I think for somebody who's competent with a pistol, they're usually holstered and just looking around. Halfway into the drill, like I think it's 7 seconds or something crazy to get off like a hammered pair at one of the close yard lines. It's always been extremely forgiving. So I have to imagine that you guys are looking at that as well.
I can't. I mean, that's a good point. I agree with you. I can't recall off the top of my head if that's something that we've talked about with Gunner. But yeah, definitely. We see it at the battalion all the time. So between you and Matt, I know you remind me, but I agree. It's like I remember the old pistol range. I think it was like 25 minutes for 15 rounds at the 25. It was something. It was
10
something.
minutes. It was 10 minutes
Okay.
for 10 shots at 25 yards. Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. It was a really long time.
Yes. And I mean, you basically took a spotting scope and was like, okay, that's where I hit. You put the spotting scopes down, and then you kind of Kentucky windaged where you needed to hit. And then
my memory was wildly off, but I remember it being
well, it feels like 25 minutes.
It feels like a long time. Like nobody in the right mind. it's based on NRA bullseye style, right? That's the
Oh,
exact same time
right.
increment that they give you for the bullseye or whatever you want to call it, course of fire. And
Yeah.
Matt would know that because that was what he shot when he first joined the team. But
Yes.
yes, like it is intended for people who are like parsing out like the difference between the 10 and the X ring and
Yeah.
really like dialing in and taking
Yes.
all the time they need, stretching
Yeah.
out their arm, but none of that's applicable to combat.
No, I agree. And that's some of the, again, I don't want to use, we already talked about, I don't want to say good or bad. This is especially one of those things I don't want to say good or bad because I don't want to say high power bad, action good. But those are the types of things I agree with you, as they're holdovers that don't really fully transition over what we're doing now. But again, in the JMAP fielding plan, JMAP is designed to go to the FMTUs. One, so the RMA can eventually replace the CMP tables, but we'd have to look in to see utilization. But in theory, you could have JMAP used to replace the scoring of. Well, I mean, in the IMA and the pistol portion, I believe we already use JMAP. But yes, most of where we're going is hit factor scoring for everything. Once the contractor for KDAS, it's a Loma system for basically Long Bay. Once that contract gets let, we're already talking to the right folks to make a digital bridge, sort of use JMAP for Short Bay, KDAS for Long Bay, digital bridge, the entirety of the score automated in the McTims. And then over time, if you're automating the score, and like you said, you're paying a little bit better attention to the quote unquote par time, you shrink that down. You definitely could get to something, maybe not exactly like when you got 25 30 target points hit factor versus a point-based score, but you definitely could start using some more of those different types of methodologies to enhance lethality. And that's had great discussions between me and Gunnar Grayek and Ken Nelson at Practice Score on that. So the potentialities are out there. The service just needs to finish fielding all these electronic scoring / data analytics devices. Then obviously probably have to find some money to make digital bridges, but there's also a lot of data out there. We recently did again the testing with the TBS lieutenants. We took data at every yard line, and it really it's very interesting to look at marksmanship across the 300 man TBS company. Instead of just looking at aggregate score, starting to really look at by yard line where we're good from the 5 to the 500, and that's also hugely informative on how you design your training package, right? If I'm horrible at the 500, common sense, I'd pay more attention to training at the 500. If I'm horrible Short Bay, I'd pay more attention to Short Bay. So again, all this stuff would come back in the circle to how does technology help us out? But yeah, I definitely think the standard magazine of 10 rounds and 5 minutes to shoot 10 rounds is not very realistic, especially when someone else is shooting back at you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So the last question I have for you before I turn it over to Matt, with all these, I guess, metrics and microdata coming in, was there also some consideration for making it easier to gauge new weapons technologies' impact on lethality coming back from like the fleet in terms of information? Say, for example, would it make it easier for a battalion to test out red dots on the M18s and immediately have some kind of metric returning like this is making them that much more lethal?
You could do that. ONR, it's not published yet, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but ONR did do a red dot study on FBI agents, on brand new FBI agents. And I mean, you could probably guess, Frank, is a brand new shooter generally going to do better with a red dot than iron sights, regardless if he has any training? That's pretty much what that study is going to show. Again, I don't want to quote it specifically because I've only talked to people about it. And JMAP and ONR were involved in that. So yes, you could. Yes, you could. We've done some testing with 6.5 caliber with Syscom. Yeah, I think JMAP, you can use it for a lot of different things. And I think the last thing we talked about with Ken Nelson is like having a drill builder inside the score. So if you wanted to mess around with whatever your heart desire from a training perspective, you could do that and then keep the data locally, because what we wouldn't want is we don't want to compare non-like things. We wouldn't want to have something that was the calculated and averaged in the aggregate service IMA score that wasn't actually the IMA, because then that changes what the data means. So Ken's way smarter than me. They're thinking about doing that, so everybody could use it. And we use JMAP to record scores for precision marksmen, because what we're trying to do is we tested snipers on a similar course of fire. Now PMs that are not snipers, and the purpose is to be able to show leaders in hit factor type data the difference in capabilities. 8 weeks of training with guys that had training in the platoon before they got to the school. This is what they get on course of fire. Similar course of fire, non snipers didn't get any real advanced training. This is your score. So we use JMAP for a lot, and I think when it hits the fleet, folks will definitely figure out how to continue to optimize that program.
Awesome.
One thing I'll add, you touched on before with ONR going to the FBI and kind of doing the red dot site study. As we've discussed before on the podcast, I did an internship over at the FBI, and whenever I did that internship, it was right before the FBI transition. Like, they were going through the transition of issuing new agents and everybody red dot sites. And so while I was there, while we were still primarily teaching iron sight shooting. But I remember one of the students, like, she did not do so well whenever it came to iron sight shooting. So they brought her over to one of the other ranges there. They let her shoot the qual over again, but with a red dot. They did some extra training with her. And guess what? She learned, and she was a lot better. She was better off for it. She understood the principles behind what was being discussed at that point. So I mean, I've even noticed it in my transition over to red dot sight, going and shooting my limited gun with an optic on it. You just see more information, you could process more information being put out there, and you can understand exactly what's happening, and you can do quicker follow-on shots, and exactly where your pistol's hitting.
Yeah, you guys are. I'm not a competitive marksman, but I mean, you literally don't have to have sight alignment. You are literally pointing the weapon someplace, putting a dot on it, and that there's no sight alignment. It's just point and shoot. So I think there, all that stuff is interesting, and I'm talking people at infantry PM infantry weapons know that this test is coming out, and that may be used to help facilitate some decisions in Marine Corps. But that's guys at the lower level talking. That's not. I don't want to get again in front of general officers. But a lot. I agree with you. The dot is great, and the only thing for that we got to remember, regardless of what we're doing with all this technology, is batteries. My company got me when I was CO Alpha 17 had a Palcon of batteries, and it was double locked. And if anyone even looked at it, they were going to get their behind whooped, because they'd excuse my language, they'd rat. I don't know a better word than rat fuck, but they'd rat fuck the batteries, and then they wouldn't have batteries for NVGs or their packs. And I'm like, Gunny, I need batteries. So that's the only thing that I get. I love a red dot. That's the only thing I get leery about is when we start having extra battery requirements for radios and drones and now optics. But I'm a big fan of red dot, and I think the more we educate ourselves in the military about how much more lethal that makes us, especially in aggregate with large numbers and statistically significant data, I would only assume that we would start trending to that as you discussed, Matt.
So, continuing on with the rifle marksmanship assessment, the MAR admin mentions that the rifle marksmanship assessment is going to be replacing tables 3 through 6, which I would say arguably is one of the biggest changes. Rifles 3 through 6 was one of the biggest changes since like the early days, like whenever I came in, whenever it was just the field course at the time. So, we're now doing another pivot and making another transition. And legacy marksmanship skill sets are being phased out in favor of current techniques, which often encounters ideological and emotional rebuttals. And I can speak to that because, whenever I was at the battalion, you would get a lot of the old timers calling up, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you fucking changing shit? But what has it been like shepherding the RMA through its nascent stages, and how has Weapons Training Battalion dealt with contrary opinions on the marksmanship assessment?
Well, we've been pretty lucky, honestly, because General Sullivan and General Iams are supportive. My first comment, yeah, they've been supportive, and General Sullivan was the one that actually directed the RMA to be done. I think it actually says in the MAR admin that he directed that. He decided on his own just because he's a believer. We've had him to the battalion. He shot some of the drills. I think it's important for key leaders. Again, most of my generation, I'm not a general, I'm not going to be a general, so I'm not saying I'm a peer of Brigadier General Sullivan, but anyone about my age and older in the Marine Corps never qualified on the rifle range with an RCO, right? Because I didn't. And I got, so we are unintentionally uninformed sometimes, but General Sullivan has been out there. He believes in the data. He's listened to the ONR folks. He's talked to his commanders and Marines out in the field and believes that it's a better way. And he directed that we do it, which is certainly in line with everything that General Iams wants to do. Now, having said that, it's not easy. It's not perfect, because when we do courses at Weapons Training Battalion Quantico, we'll do 1 to 24 student instructor ratio. The SOIs are doing, 1 to 14 in a class of 300. So oftentimes the difficulty has been not from a lack of desire from senior leaders. It's hard to get it done at scale on multiple different coasts with multiple different organizations. And then again, we're going pretty fast. We're going pretty fast. I mean, we don't even have this JMAP's not even a program of record, quote unquote, right? So JMAP just got on to phase 3 SIBR small business contract. We just got a money for 24. So we're literally moving that quickly. The infantry marksmanship training program POI just got signed a month or two ago by General Sullivan. So we're literally moving that fast. And I know the SOIs are down at the summit this week. They're going to talk more about RMA optimization, but that was another thing that we talked about. Didn't quite make it out in the MAR admin, but this year is sort of the year we codified AMT or infantry marksmanship training. That's good through Weapons Training Battalion throughout the SOIs. At some point, that either needs to be put in the infantry as the TNR task and or the marksmanship order. And now this year is RMA optimization. So what is the best way to conduct that course of fire, lesser included course of fire than IMT at TVS and the SOIs, because we're all slightly different. MCTs are generally supposed to be close, but I've only got 14 training days across 3 weeks with a lieutenant. So we just got to figure out really the right way to do it amongst us. And one of the things that Josh, Greg, my gunner, did the last 2 IMT courses are Marines from across the FMTUs, because we have a CMT CCRB that we've purposely moved further to the right so we can get all this done and put into really my only 2 service POIs, which is CMC and CMT. And we don't want to do it without knowledge and input from the FMF. So we have some folks from the MAR4Res shooting team here this week. As you know, Matt, they also do the reserve CMC CMT course here. More folks from different FMTUs across the nation. So it's easier to do things with just Weapons Training Battalion and the SOIs, but then operationalizing it, send it out to the fleet. It just takes a while. It just takes a while, and it gets complicated just because it's big, not because there's a lot of people that are saying they don't want it. I've talked with A lot of senior leaders in both first and second MARDIV, regimental commanders and higher, they're interested in it. They like what it is, and folks are noticing in them of FMF. So it is going to continue to happen. I believe that the marksmanship campaign plan, which was mentioned in the MAR admin, that's General Iams' way to manage and nest all these different changes to include inclusion and rolling out of all this different technology. So again, ARQ successful, infantry marksmanship training successful. Generals are pushing us, leaders of the Corps pushing us very fast to do a thing. And everyone listening, you guys know, usually you execute the thing once the 5-paragraph order is signed and the Marine Corps planning process is done. We are deliberate. There is decisions involved, but this is also very, at times, organic. Or a colonel or a gunny or a gunner has a good idea, or the CMS has a good idea. I mean, that's where most of the stuff in the MAR admin came from. It's like, okay, we're doing all these things. It's generally positive. We're getting very good data back, but like, is it organized enough? And that's really where the marksmanship campaign plan idea came in. And I'm anticipating General Iams' assignment before he's done at TCOM this summer. But that would be the document at the 3-star level to make sure 5 years from now with JMAP fielded that 3rd Marine Division is doing the same thing that 1st Marine Division is doing. And that if it, COCOM, we got to go to war again. COCOM saying we're doing the RMA, and every FMTU can facilitate with JMAP, a JMAP kit for Marines to be able to do that training and course of fire before they deploy, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And like to you speaking about everything is just coming so fast. I remember years ago it was just like, this is going slow. This needs to start getting pushed. And like once things started trickling, the rocks eroded and the floodgates broke through and everything just started coming. And I mean, it's pretty amazing to see, like from the outside perspective now, it's really interesting just to see it from the outside. As you will see whenever you leave active service this summer.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And some of the things, again, don't want to beat up on all the old timers. I've had, Keith, talking to Keith Sanderson. He was very involved with the battalion and rewriting tables. And he's not the only person I've talked to. They're like, well, how are you getting all this done? And I think the biggest difference is honestly we're retrospectively looking back at 20 years of war, produced a combat-based lethality assessment. General Berger challenged us to change. And it's not, I mean, I'm not pushing up. I am pushing ideas up. We are pushing ideas up, but I'm pushing ideas up to a receptive audience at the senior leader level, who then oftentimes goes, okay. I mean, I've had General Iams say that, that's great, Greg. I want you to do more, basically. And I'm like, okay. I have a
and
very
then sometimes
small staff.
and then sometimes you'd be like, okay, slow down, pull the reins back.
Right. So that's, just history is important. Like, why did the Marine Corps go to the mandated annual rifle range? Right. Well, my understanding is there were too many negligent discharges during the Gulf War. So then we implemented an annual rifle range. We've had an annual rifle range since the 1900s, but and then obviously in the middle, I remember CMP tables coming out as OIF started, right? So there's constant involvement and constant improvement. It's not Jones and Weapons Training Battalion are smarter than Smith and Johnson that were a weapons training battalion, 7 years prior. It's an evolution, and we're lucky right now because we have a lot of things transpired and people are super serious about it for multiple different reasons. So again, long-winded answer to your question. RMA in itself is not hard. A lot of people are excited. It's just standardizing the rollout so it's safe, effective, and it's as you get as quality of an output when it's a 1 to 24. Not 1 to 24. It's really like 24 students and it's almost a 1 to 2 student instructor ratio of weapons training battalion. Can be done with a 1 to 14 student instructor ratio at like an ITB, but things people have to figure out all the eaches when you roll out big programs across the service, because nobody wants to lose efficiency once you upscale it, especially not from a quality of marksmanship perspective.
No, I mean everybody's looking to find efficiency somewhere, but they also have to look at what cost are we getting this efficiency.
Yeah.
And I think, from everything I've observed from, just going around and being that hang around now at the battalion, it's like, all right, everything's kind of like you're not losing, you're gaining, you're not losing.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest discussions that we had with the gunners 2 years ago is because JMAP was moving along, JMAP and infantry marksmanship training hand in hand, hand in glove. They're inseparable. And we started talking to the senior gunners about how do we okay, what's the next step? I'm not an acquisitions guy. John Costa's not an acquisitions guy. O&R, they're not, from at least the guys we deal with, they're really smart, but they're not necessarily acquisitions guys.
How do you
get how do you get this done? Like, how do you get this done and get this paid for? And some people, and again, I appreciate the guidance from the people that said this. Some of the senior gunners was like, sir, don't sell a marksmanship product that you have to have this technology with it. And they weren't trying to kill. They were not trying to kill infantry marksmanship training. They were trying to save it. I had not seen anything like that. They had not seen anything like that. We didn't know how much it was going to cost. We hadn't done that work. And we were really nervous if we went up and said, like, I need double-digit millions of dollars. We were going to get told no. Demonstrated as a General IAMS, he said, I like it. Yes, figure out how to pay for it. Training Education Command, traced the staff, helped us out a lot. Probably did most of the work. My gunners did more work. I just went to meetings, right? And we got to a number. General IAM said, I want it. And hopefully that's what we'll get. So again, it's not, long-winded answer to, is it easy to implement RMA or not? When all those things are done and conditions are set, and had a boss that said higher headquarters job is to lead block, which they're doing. When they're lead blocking, and Staff Sergeant Hill and Sergeant Duncan, those guys can just run and score a touchdown.
Yeah, I honestly would not want to see the flow chart of how everything got completed. I mean, I saw some of it, but it's like that's a lot of communication back and forth and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but
Colonel Missy Posey, the TCOM G3 was huge. She just kept the process running. That's actually a new process that Training Education Command started, the Training and Education Needs Statement, right? So how do you take, we know what an UNS is, right? How do you take a thing that you need against the breadth and depth, the expanse of training command, and make it happen? Well, that was a nascent process. Last year's MAR admin came out. It said, CG said, fund it. So we walked up there and like, how do we fund it? And then we just sort of walked into this process. Webb's Training Battalion was one of the first people that submitted a TENS, but sure enough, we got enough of the right people in the room, and a MAR admin signed by the 3-star and a great G3 that was going to get done what her CG said get done, and a lot of help from a lot of GS civilians that actually know the process. When the uniform guys just asking for help, and hopefully we still need the money, from my understanding, like to be approved in it through the MROC, but it's moving in the right direction.
Oh yeah. So kind of pushing the conversation over to the shooting team side of the house. This last summer, the pistol team put together arguably one of the most complete and hard-earned competitive seasons in team history. Recent team history, I'd say, with multiple top 10 finishes at PCSL and USPSA Nationals. Some of the pistol team members are contenders to qualify for the IPSC World Shoot in South Africa in 2026. However, the team sometimes draws comparisons with the AMU, who frequently has shooters winning matches overall. Are those comparisons fair, given that the AMU's commitment to allowing soldiers to finish their careers there? And what are your expectations for the Marine Corps shooting team's competitive accolades after having been their CO for the last couple of years?
So I'm not a duty expert on AMU. So if anyone listens to podcasts and I misspeak, I apologize. I just haven't spent a lot of time studying them. I don't think it's fair. I have met a couple of the soldiers from AMU, CMP Nationals, Inter-Service Rifle. They're great guys. They're really good. The Army, for what can hire college athlete in the shooting sports and make them a specialist, right? We can't do that. I can't do that. I mean, getting a second. We only even have, I think, one person on the team right now that's a second tour shooting team member. So it's hard to even get folks back a second time. So it's not a fair comparison. Teams should not compare themselves to AMU. And from my understanding, AMU doesn't even fall under the Army's version of training command. I was told, I'm not sure, that they sort of fall under like recruiting command. Again, I don't know, but
I want to say they bounce between recruiting command and TRADOC, and I don't know where they are
Okay.
in that cycle right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so from my understanding, I mean, for a long time, and that what the Web's training battalion, the shooting team, there's been different permutations the further you go back, have generally fallen under, I think,
MCST.
Yes,
They
right.
used to fall under MCST.
Yep, and training command, I think, used to fall under MCST, and that's sort of when I'm gonna forget the name of the major who was the marksmanship desk officer that approved this formation of the Scout Sniper School. Right, that's Jack Cut. I forget his name. He's
Jim Land.
Yes, Jim Land was a marksmanship. This is in the 70s. So MCST, Jim Land, marksmanship desk, weapons training battalion wasn't weapons training battalion, but there was a shooting team that fell under MCST or MCDEC at the time, and I think the base rifle range. But those sort of factors came together. The shooting team being seminal at Quantico, those factors came together to be the secret sauce that would enable the standing up of the Marine Corps' first sort of permanent Scout Sniper Instructor School, because before that point in time, it had been ad hoc, sort of in theater training. And so, again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And I do appreciate the wisdom of the folks that came before us, because like that's how AMTP program, infantry marksmanship training program, came about. It was, the teams are always the center of gravity of what oftentimes, maybe not always, but oftentimes is the center of gravity of what the battalion does, because of the quality of Marine that comes onto the team. The same draw that Carlos Hathcock and Jack Cuddy had to the shooting team to get access to the best marksmen to create snipers is the same draw that John Costa really had to the shooting team members within the battalion to help him create infantry marksman training program. So, and now with the Advanced Marksmanship Training Company, with PM course, Precision Marksman course now in place of Scout Sniper course, the Infantry Marksmanship Training Cadre, and teams together in one company, that's really just designed to be the location that focuses on all of our advanced marksmanship training programs and to keep those alive. And then, and again, but it's not just for guys in the infantry or guys that want to be, that are going to a MIC. Like, remember, like, I'm charged with doing this for the whole service, and we've got folks from all the FMTUs going through IMTP. So then, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. So then we make better CMCs, better CMTs, have a better, again, I hate saying better, a range, an entry level rifle range that provides a more lethal product than the ART and legacy marksmanship. So that's sort of the method to the madness, but it all focuses on getting the best folks into the team, I think, because again, they're cross-pollination to different POIs. At least, you know, the Jack Cuddy history is a 47-year history, so that's pretty significant, right? So that's, I don't think the teams need to worry about their importance. They're important, and then but definitely I think the teams being under training command help them translate the lethality that they learned out in the best TTPs in the civilian world into POIs, multiple different POIs, just because of their relationship with the battalion. And then again, like I said before, AMTC is designed to help cross-pollinate those to other courses. Did that answer your question?
No, it does. Yeah, and it's funny just talking about some of the history of how teams fell under. It's like the team fell under MCST, you know, but weapons training battalion just had ad hoc or
Yeah.
administrative authority of the teams, and it got
Yeah.
to the point where like weapons training battalion is like, why are we supporting them? Why are
Yeah.
we giving? And then it essentially turned into teams falling primarily under weapons training battalion, with TACON and ADCON and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
But like again, with that thought process, again, I don't think it's a secret to people to pay attention. I'm purposely standing down uh, the teams from formal competition participation and high power. Again, it's not a good or bad. It's a more relevant versus less relevant to a combat marksmanship perspective. But then again, what happens? What happens in 5 years when there's no more snipers to go into the precision marksman course, right? Where are they going to come from? Well, hopefully that they'll come from the rifle team, which is now focused in PRS, gas gun and bolt gun, right? With weapon systems that they might not be exactly like the Mark 110, the M110 and the Mark 22, but they're more akin to them than the national match M16, right? So then I've got a cadre of high-end, long-range rifle marksmen that can then flow back into a course or train students, high-end marksmen that get orders to the battalion, or we recruit, train them up, put them into the PM course that then provides the capability. Right now, for weapons training battalions, the only place in the Marine Corps that is teaching long-range direct precision rifle fires with the M110 and the Mark 22. Probably not too huge of a deal right now because we got a lot of 03 school trained 0317s rolling around. But again, that's the neat thing about weapons training battalion is we often get to do some unique training from a marksmanship perspective. Has been since anyone that I know that's been around the battalion can remember, and I believe is going to continue to be that way. And the shooting team will be there as a very important part of that, I think, for years to come.
Now, we obviously the battalion has been through a relatively large restructure, and the teams has not been outside of that restructure. With some of the elements of the teams being consolidated under the action banner, do you still see a need for specialization in weapons platforms under the Marine Corps shooting team construct? And is there a benefit to transitioning both 3-gun and pistol to a 2-gun focus?
Yeah. So I do. What we're working on that. We need this because you're a staffing, so I see the pain in the butt with the teams is really, I think, procurement of weapons and chasing the new hotness, because I can't just buy a weapon. I think you're the most recent person that sort of figured out how to do it with the CZs. In precision weapons section, I can alter a weapon. I can alter a serial number. I am not an FFL. I'm not an arms dealer. So if I wanted to get a 6.5 or whatever, that starts to have to be an action or a piece of the weapon that has a serial number. That's a pain. That's a pain in the butt. So yes, we need some specialization. But in general, really right now, we're making for PRS, we're making do with the weapons that we have or we can make. Shotgun time will tell. I think really right now the shotguns we have are good enough. We're going to keep competing in shotgun, and really probably for the next CO, he'll have to decide if like trying to procure more shotguns is worth it or not. But definitely you can see the logic where we're going with the PRS. If we needed to buy special weapons to best compete, we've tied the train of logic together with return on investment to the FMF. I think pistol is not a primary weapon, and from my understanding, the new infantry battalion, the littoral combat team, decided initially they were going to have Marines be dual arms. Now that went back to just service rifle. Having said that, with pistol though, I believe the team should be allowed to push the envelope in certain disciplines. Like I'm not going to tell the team that they can't do carry optics. But again, this campaign plan that the new Advanced Marksmanship Training Company commander is going to build me is designed to set a 3 to 5 year plan on what we want to compete in, what we want to compete in, drives what weapon systems we want to procure. And then I have to PM ammo is great to us, but I have to deal with PM. I don't mean that in a bad way. We have to work with PM ammo to get non-standard match ammo. So as well as I do that can be a complicated thing, and sometimes just the logistics to manage a shooting team doesn't mean that I can jump into the if laser guns became the next hotness for action shooting. Well, I'm not doing that, right? Not this year, not next year. That's just going to take and that's going to take time to catch up. But definitely PRS, all things PRS. I don't have an issue with pistols. We'll stay in pistols. We'll stay in carry optics. Because again, the service is out. The team is out there doing those types of things when PMIW asks, so like, hey, what about using red dots instead of lasers, right? For a lot of different reasons. We can go over to the teams and say, hey, like, what do you know about this? And they're very helpful. What about shooting drones with 5.56? Guess who walks from one side of the base over to teams, right? This happens. So not that we're going to spend a lot of time competing in competitions to try to hit a little drone with or any time with the 5.56. But you see what I'm saying, letting the teams run a little bit and do some non-standards things, as long as it's not crazy, as long as they're still returning the investment back to making the standard Marine Corps marksmanship packages more lethal, then I'm fine if they run a little bit. Again, hopefully that answers your question and not too circuitous.
No, it does, definitely.
I think another aspect of it is just the match availability. Some of the formats that you talked about, I think PRS, there are some good PRS matches. There's one on Quantico, some in Peacemaker. But in terms of pistol focused, there's just so many options. In terms of, 3-gun has several options. The team goes to Duskin. They sometimes go down to North Carolina. So I think, it's partly dictated by the amount of matches that are available. And part of the reason I ask this is because, there has been a sentiment like you said, the pistol is a secondary. What's the point of focusing on it? And I'd say two things. One is that pistol matches are everywhere.
Yeah.
The skill ceiling is incredibly high on the pistol side. And you've also seen, if you're going to look at match results, two of the pistol team members that shot at the PCSL 2-gun championships placed within the top 3. There's John Treat and Sam Nelson. And they don't specialize in rifle. It's just that the things that they do with pistol carries over so well to rifle. And I think, it'll be interesting to see if the Marine Corps kind of picks up on that working on the pistol invariably transfers to other skills such as shooting on the move, target transitions. And if you're able to shoot things well with the pistol, then you're probably going to be okay with the rifle.
We actually had a question from our higher headquarters about that very thing today, is why do we have pistol in infantry marksmanship training, right? And that was, and we got, and that Gunner Gray responded with basically the exact same thing that you just said, Frank. And the question we got back was, okay, is that opinion or database? And I think, again, these are good questions. No one, it was a different context that I can't talk about, but I think that the next step when we want to have those discussions is starting to show that, just to make sure. It's like, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If you can shoot pistol really well in multiple different formats, then it's gonna translate. So I believe that, and again, I shoot with the teams enough. I think the important thing for anybody on the team is, I don't have an issue if they're more of a pistol guy or more of a 2-gun guy or a PRS guy, but especially when their primary function in my mind is to run mix, to whether it's a IMT given back to the fleet or to increase lethality, or teams given back to the fleet. Their member training command, our primary purpose is to train. Do I want them to win individual accolades? Of course I do. But I want them to be better able to bring the best TTPs back to give to our Marines. So again, if there's pistol guys, great, but they should be able to teach. They should be the best, well-rounded, in my mind, marksmen in the Marine Corps, and I think generally they are. because like you said, they get super addicted. But again, I don't have an issue with specialization. I think we would be wrong to try and make them generalists.
So, final
Or,
question I
excuse me,
have.
no, I meant to say it that way. It would be wrong to make them generalists. Their specialization is fine, but I don't want them skilled enough that they can do multiple things. I'm sorry, Matt.
Oh no, it's all good. Final question, and we've had this conversation all, and me being on teams, I've kind of experienced it and kind of had the same questions myself. But the teams has faced existential threats, whether perceived or internalized throughout its existence, and often outsiders without an understanding of the link between high level marksmanship and developing the overall lethality of the force might question why we need a shooting team. In your eyes, what does a team need to do to evolve to meet the requirements of the fleet?
Yeah, so they do talk about that a lot. I don't think that I've never. Yeah, I don't think the Marine Corps shooting team needs to worry about going away, and they're moving in the direction that they need to be doing. I think the only time, they just did on the Marine Corps birthday, they just basically did an ad hoc micmac by request and paid for by the leadership of Guantanamo Bay. I mean, that's the kind of that's the kind of stuff that they are doing and they need to be doing. Lots of smiling faces at Micmacs. I don't go to every one. I was just down in Camp Lejeune. They had 24 teams that stayed on to the team competition. They had so many people that wanted to stay for the team competition. Captain Williams just really, we have to turn people away for scratch teams because they already were going to be shooting all day long. So that's really one of the discussions we're having next year, because a disadvantage moving from the high power format is throughput, as we have lesser throughput. So with taking the ARQ out this year and going to sort of a 1 week format, the idea now is, okay, do we have Micmac 29 Palms at Camp Lejeune? Do we go down there for 2 weeks? Maybe not back to back, but 2 days in between or something like that. So when I'm talking about those, when those are my problems, is trying to figure out how to do more mix and get more people trained. I think teams is doing just fine. They just need to remember that it's all about paying back to the FMF and increasing lethality of the individual Marine. As long as they're positioning themselves to do that, then they're going to be just fine. Again, center of gravity of the battalion since the inception of teams. I mean, you guys, it's in the downrange club. There's a lot of history there. I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
No, that's awesome. And that's all I have. Frank, do you have anything else?
Nothing else. We appreciate you coming on and talking to us. Always a good discussion, and we'd love to have you on, for the foreseeable future, because I think you're going to continue to work with marksmanship and weapons and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm retiring if anybody wants to hire me. No, again, the neat thing about the campaign plan, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. General Iams is leaving this summer. General Sullivan's leaving this summer. I'm leaving. Not that the Marine Corps always continues when humans leave and leaders leave. But the most important thing is that campaign plan, I believe, will get signed, and then folks aren't starting over. And and it's not this year. These things that we discussed are multiple year things. And so the fact that General Iams is interested in having an overarching plan that nests all the things we talked about is super important. So we're not reinventing the wheel or trying to figure out why everyone always, the last commander, the last OIC, or the last sergeant major, the last first sergeant, platoon sergeant, like, why did he do it that way? So at this level, I think it's just a responsible thing to do. So we just stay on plan. Not that future leaders can't make decisions and go a different direction, but they're just not starting from scratch. So yeah, a lot more work to be done. I'd be happy to do it again. Certainly we can pass this relationship on to my successor. You guys know a lot of the folks in the battalion. I think we're actually thinking about doing one over. I was talking to Matt, doing another podcast, probably with just the teams, talking about inter-service rifle, just to really advertise the fact that it's more of a tactical rack grade service rifle or sniper rifle competition this year, less the high power. Again, not hating on high power, just looking at venues to have the best format to train Marines on. I mean, honestly, on current weapons vice antiques. And so we're very appreciative of the relationship that you guys have with the battalion, and always enjoy doing this.
No, we appreciate that you let us still come around, even for old fat retired guys like myself.
No, you do pretty good.
One thing I would like to do before you do retire is get a career retrospective. I think that's something that'll be extremely important because it'll give a perspective from a high level leader like yourself, you know, who demands and expects a lot, but also, you know, gives praise where it's due, and let Marines hear what it's, you know, a retrospective of a career of a high level officer like yourself.
Yeah, too easy. I mean, high levels all relative, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind talking about it because the Marine Corps has changed a lot, and I like to think that I've seen some stuff. But yeah, be happy to do it.
Well, again, we really appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to the next time we get to speak to you. To our
Yeah.
listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any comments, if you'd like to reach out to Weapons Training Battalion, Colonel Jones, or to the shooting team, please get get a hold of us, and we'll put you in contact. Other than that, please drop a like, comment, anything that can give us a boost. And if you have any questions for us, just feel free to ask. Thanks.